Hello everyone, welcome this evening. Nice to have you here. All of you who are our ushers and our ministers of care. I really, truly see this as a very important meeting. Yes, it's a meeting because I need to talk to you about a few things about the ministry, but it's also an opportunity for me, on behalf of the Cathedral Parish, to thank you for your role. You're there week after week after week, and what are you doing? A lot of what you do gets no appreciation whatsoever. Once a year, every other year, a nice little dinner. Well, I do thank you very much so, because I believe that first impressions for anyone who enters into our church are so important. There's only one opportunity to make a good first impression. And once upon a time, if you entered into a church and you were welcomed by someone, you knew you were in a Protestant church, not a Catholic church. And why might that be the case? Well, especially our emphasis on you got to go to church. And I go to church and there I am, I'm in the pews, and this is my prayer time. I'm praying to God. I've got my rosary, the priest is up there saying the Mass, I'm doing my thing, and I don't know the person next to me here or there. And Father, why do I really have to offer the sign of peace to people around me? It's rather disturbing to my prayer time. Well, one of the things, obviously, that the church has done with the Second Vatican Council is to try to reach back to the early church with regards, for example, to the sacrament of the anointing of the sick. Remember how at one point it got to where you can only receive the sacrament once, and it was at the extremity of life, extreme unction, and the church said, no, wait a minute, that's not what the earliest of Christians were doing. Let's return to the early practice of anointing someone whenever they were sick, I mean, obviously, seriously ill, and we pray for healing. So a person could be anointed any number of times. Well, with regards to our understanding of the church and the gathering, we now have a better appreciation of what it was that the early church did. They gathered. Okay, the word church, that comes from a German word, by the way. The word in Latin is ecclesia. Ecclesia. It mimics the Greek. Kalein means to call. Ek or ex means out. You're calling out a group of people so that they can gather together. We are a gathering. We are meant to be a family. We are meant to be people who worship together. And now, with a better appreciation of the Mass as a gathering, and not just one person coming, a whole bunch of individuals praying, as if this were a me and God religion, which it is not. This is us, we, family. We need to be able to also highlight what we would do at our home. Someone comes to the door, we greet them, we welcome them, we let them, we show them where the gathering might be. By the way, the word gathering is used in the Roman Missal. You know that big red book? There's a general instruction of the Roman Missal right at the very beginning. And it speaks about the gathering. And I counted it because I have an online version, I have a version of the Roman Missal on my computer itself, so I can just do a little word search and it's easy. 10 times that it specifically refers to the people who are in Mass as a gathering. So people have gathered. We need to greet. There should never be anyone who ever feels as if a stranger in their own home. And the Catholic Church is home to over 1.3 billion people on the planet. And so, you certainly know when you've gone to other churches, other places, and wow, wasn't that nice? That was very nice. I felt welcomed, or quite the contrary. I showed up and I was like, oh my goodness, I mean, am I in a Catholic church? So, the ministry of hospitality. I've already spoken to some of you about this, what is being called the Amazing Parish movement. And they've identified a number of things that really help a church become an amazing church, an amazing parish. And I've mentioned it to you before, the 3 H's, all right? I'll say them in reverse order. Homily, hymn, and hospitality, all right? So now, hospitality, being the number one, the very first thing, you're the ministers of first impressions, all right? You are the minister. I'm not making the first impression. You know, someone may have already entered into the church having just lost a loved one, having come from a home of domestic abuse, having come from an unbelievably, ecstatically wonderful family experience. They might be passing through, they Googled, and they saw right off the interstate, is this cathedral? We're going to stop there. People do that, by the way. They stop, and then they keep going on their journey. Who knows the reasons so many people gather? You have gathered for all sorts of reasons, an unbelievably great desire to thank the Lord, to worship Him, this is all about petition. Oh my Lord, I need help. My loved one, my situation at home, at work, whatever it may be. So again, we're there to be able to greet, be unbelievably hospitable. Some people you'll recognize right away. I've been here over 13 years, all right? So at the end of Mass, someone walks by, and I'm like, oh, you know, I hope you have a nice Sunday. Where are you from? I now know, I mean, if I haven't seen a person, every once in a while it's, well, I'm from Shreveport, I just go to another parish. Well, welcome. Welcome to your cathedral. Usually it's, well, I'm visiting from somewhere, I'm passing through. And you as greeters and also as ushers, you as well should be able, before too long, to be able to identify those people very well. Every once in a while, a 4 p.m. Saturday greeter or usher may say, welcome to the cathedral. And they're like, this is my parish. I go to the 11 o'clock Mass. You know, so sometimes, you know, people are so particular to their Mass time that we might actually accidentally welcome someone who is already belongs to us, but that's fine. We welcome them nonetheless. There has to be a spirit of joy. That's one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. And we welcome them. It's not that we even have to enter into this huge conversation with them. In fact, it's not appropriate, really. You know, hey, good to see you again. Welcome, here. You know. And of course, one of my real concerns also deals with those who have physical disabilities. And fortunately, over the last months, we have had people stationed on the east entrance and the west entrance right here who are very quick to be to assist people, open the door. It only takes a couple of weeks to figure out where they like to sit, you know, and to go ahead and get them the hymnal, the book, whatever they may need, and to literally accompany them in, not just open up the door and now, okay, you know, make sure they get to the pew all right, lift up the kneeler if need be. Before too long, you will get to know them, ask them their name. I mean, what an act of hospitality to ask a name. Everyone likes to be known and likes to hear their name, and then the next week it's like, oh, hello, Mr. So and Mrs. So-and-so. Hospitality. Now, in the general instruction of the Roman Missal, it does not use the word minister of hospitality. It doesn't even use the word usher. Sorry, ushers. It does say that there are people who are in the role of sacristan. So it says a sacristan who diligently arranges the liturgical books, the vestments, everything, gets everything ready. I mean, I am so unbelievably fortunate such that I could walk in literally 3 minutes before Mass, and it's happened. And I walk in, looked at the sacristan, and you know, got the thumbs up, throw the alabon, chasuble. I know everything is in place. I mean, it's wonderful, it's great. You never know why the priest may be delayed, whether negligence on my part, time got away from me, or, you know, some sick call or something last minute that I needed to do. So the sacristan is considered a minister. The reader is a minister. A minister of Holy Communion is also mentioned here. A commentator is mentioned here. You know, kind of like what I did, 4 weeks during the John chapter 6 series, in which I said, okay, and now, at the beginning of Mass, this is what we call the introductory rite. And what are the different introductory rites? I mean, literally, what I could have done, and in fact, Monsignor Lacaz and I did it like 6 years ago. I'm kind of like, and now Father Lacaz is taking a little piece of the particle of the body of Christ and putting it into the chalice. You know, it's like that, almost like this commentary going on literally, and now you notice this, or whatever, you know. I don't think it envisions like a play-by-play during the Mass, but there are times in which a commentary can enhance a person's worship. You have a better sense of what's going on. And it mentions a commentator who can give brief explanations and exhortations to direct the people's attention to the celebration, ensure that they are better disposed for understanding it. This comes straight out of that big red book, all right? And it says a few more things there. And then it talks about those who those who take up the collections in the church, all right? So that's considered a minister. Now listen to this one. Those who welcome the faithful at the church doors, seat them appropriately, and marshal them in processions. Now, these would be like 3 different people. It's not one person doing all these things. And so, who would marshal someone in procession? I think of Mary Kay standing over there. It's time for a wedding. The wedding coordinator, what happens? Okay, come on, mama of the bride, stand here, you ready? Okay, go, now, you know, and she's marshaling, I promise you she is. I saw it this last Saturday. And there could be other times in which, yes, you may have a master of ceremonies. Usually a master of ceremonies doesn't take care of all the things that are happening before Mass, but takes care of the ceremony itself. Oftentimes, what we do here is that the master of ceremonies, oftentimes myself, I would play both roles. But imagine if we had someone specifically as a, you know, we have, like I said, the wedding coordinator, the Mass coordinator, the whatever title that we would give such a person. But then, and then obviously the other thing would be the usher. Those who seat them appropriately. Now, I genuinely believe that that's from the door to the seat, and every once in a while, yep, we have to, okay, 3 people, you know, come on, hey, could you please scoot in, you know. Well, politely, you know. Actually, that kind of brings up something else too. Everyone is a minister of hospitality. I want to make sure everyone knows that they need to be hospitable. A family member has just shown up. Again, you may never have seen the person before. What is everyone else in the pew? I mean, if you can already model that when you're not at the door and you're sitting down, and, you know, a polite smile and a welcome, hello, good morning, whatever. You know, of course, we like to get on our knees on the kneeler, very appropriate, we are Catholic. But there's nothing wrong with somehow acknowledging the presence of another human being right there. Even a simple smile and a nod, you know, is all that it takes. Sometimes we can be very inhospitable because, I know I'm going to step on some people's toes here, because we like the aisle right at the edge, right there. It's mine, you know, and which really forces everyone to climb over. And sometimes it's not, you know, I would even say that we have to be careful there. I know okay, I'll stop right there. So anyways, we have a mentality that I think that we're doing so much better at overcoming. Namely, it's the me and Jesus religion. I'm there, it's my mass, and no, it's all of us together. We are a family. We need to be welcoming as we would welcome anyone to our own homes. There has to be a sense of joy. And even if a person shows up and they're kind of, down and out, disgruntled or something, and they're like, yeah, whatever, Well, I mean, they're not going to say that, but they might say it by their demeanor. Well, it's like, hey, throw a quick prayer up there, Lord, this person obviously needs something that you alone can give him or her in the context of Mass. Now, another of the ministries, like a reader, like a minister of Holy Communion, is a porter. I know the ushers have heard me speak about the whole notion of a porter. From the early days of the church, there was actually a ministry of porter. And anyone who was on their way towards being ordained a priest had to first become a porter. Porter, portal, door, you're manning the door. And in a sense, it's with the sense of, let me use this modern term, bouncer. Because you're making sure who is coming in and who is not. At a certain point, if someone was non-baptized, they were pagan, they were a heathen, you could not let them in. Maybe they were in the midst of becoming Christian, becoming Catholic. They had to wait until they were baptized. Now, once baptized, they're welcome in. I would say that in a sad consequence of our day and age, we kind of sort of need porters again, but more so on the level of added security, heightened awareness of everyone coming in. Now, that could be everyone. That could be the greeter, that could be the usher. But ushers in particular need to have a little, a greater awareness. And every once in a while we do have someone who is homeless who comes in. Great, fantastic, no problem with that. Sometimes we have someone who is, obviously there's something just wrong and we need to intercept them. And be polite, be, everything. I've actually stationed people before next to certain people, or behind, next to them, and people haven't known. This happened in our cathedral. A woman said, I have a gun and I'm going to kill you today. About 7-8 years ago. I know her name. She's deceased now. She had some issues, but I'm not going to take something like that lightly. And we had plenty of people, and as I'm walking by her in procession, I mean, this is for real. And of course, we know it in this day and age. We cannot say, well, it can never happen to us. If here we are, 9/11. This is the day that we are meeting today. It can happen. It can happen, and we need to be ready. We need to be prepared. Maybe it's time for me to remind everyone of the parish what to do if there is an armed intruder, an active shooter. The kids in this school know exactly what to do. I mean, we drill them on that. What to do if there's a tornado, because it's counterintuitive. You go in a different direction if there's an active shooter. They know. And so what you need to do, so it's really, really, really that important. We have to be hospitable, but that's also, sizing up a person. I mean, can I say that? You know what I mean? I mean, there's a moment of just being unbelievably prudent, and if every alarm in your system goes off, then you got to get someone else with you, as others continue to welcome. 999 times out of 1,000, it's going to be absolutely, there's no issue. So anyhow, so we do have a variety of liturgical functions, and the church speaks of them as two different functions, an usher and a greeter. Again, it doesn't use those words, it gives phrases as to what people do. I will use the words usher and greeter. There's no doubt in my mind as well, though, that the two overlap. And the fact that the two ministries overlap is fine. It might be kind of therefore, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, is he's supposed to be doing it, is she supposed to be doing it? Err on the side of everyone doing it. Everyone has to be hospitable. I mean, that should go without saying. But then usher needs to usher, as the word says, ushers, usher. And ushers, again, that sense of porter, bouncer, watching what's going on, extra attentive to everything. It's a real true ministry. The usher would be the one who participates in the collection, obviously. We still need that to take place. An usher is someone who also, because of a directive from the bishop, counts the number of people, and usually that happens after the collection has been taken up. You know, we're pretty sure that everyone's in by that point. They might have been 10 minutes, 15 minutes late, whatever, but they're usually in by that point, and we get a really good sense. We need to have a sense of the number of people coming and going. Also assists with when it's time for the procession, you know, marshaling a procession. This is considered a procession when people come forward to receive Holy Communion. And so, I would like to change what we've done in the past, or at least modify. When the priest starts to give Holy Communion to the ministers of Holy Communion, please bring the people from the sides out. It's a little earlier than what we're accustomed to. It accomplishes several things, in case you're wondering. One is, by the time everyone is actually out and now they're standing and they're waiting to receive Holy Communion, and there's not kind of that sense of a rush, and you know, I'm there, and it's everyone's standing waiting, which is good. I think that's very good. Another thing it does, though, is now the section is empty except for the people I need to go to. When everyone is still there, or they're standing up and they're starting to make their move over, I can't see. It's like, okay, you know, maybe I know so-and-so is there already. But, so, as I turn around and I start to distribute the host, Holy Communion, to the ministers of Holy Communion, if the ushers, please bring the people from the side. Now, of course, when it's Easter time, Christmas time, and we have a minister just for them, obviously we're going to modify it a little bit. I'm talking about the regular Saturday, Sunday masses. That's really about the only kind of modification I'd like to make to the usher's job. I do also want to say this. We only have 2 bathrooms, all right? I wish we had like 2 sets of 6 bathrooms and everything. We don't. Some parents choose to only let their children use the restroom on a Sunday morning when they get to church. I'm convinced of it. Because it's like, I just don't get it, you know. The kids know that if they say it, and they always have to leave at the same time. But before Mass, please poke your head into the bathrooms, you know, and after Mass, do the same. You know, please make sure, because I guarantee you, if a toilet hasn't been flushed after the 8 o'clock Mass, and you know this is the case, but oftentimes it just doesn't go. Poke your head inside. Just as we kind of, every Mass, the intention is that it is ready when you arrive. In other words, you're not arriving and now you're cleaning up and picking up all the bulletins and everything and looking to see if there's Kleenex around or what have you. No, you do that at the end of Mass so that it's always ready. The altar servers know the same. At the end of Mass, they know, and I'll say, hey, get it ready for the next Mass. It might be a funeral Mass. Get it ready for the next Mass, which is a regular Sunday Mass. They know, take the Paschal candle back. They know to or hey, the bishop is coming, turn it into a bishop's mass. There are things to get ready for such a mass. So it's the same thing that I would ask for the ushers, with a little special attention to the restrooms. By the way, our 5 o'clock crew, whether you know this or not, they're the last ones out for the weekend, and they actually do tend to the bathrooms and get whatever those hand wipe things are, and just wipe down everything. They take the trash out. I mean, all it takes is one little baby's diaper there, and now the next time we have mass is the kids' mass on Wednesdays. No. So the 5:30 group, Steve Coot is our main guy there who's taking care of that part. I mean, just that back corner. There's trash, everything. I mean, it's a huge, tremendous service to the parish, and in its own way is hospitable. What do you do when you have guests? You always go to the guest bathroom. You clean it. You put fresh towels. You light a candle. I mean, spray something. I don't know. Right? I mean, that's usually what you do when you're going to have company over. All right. I think I've covered everything I wanted to say. I think everyone, we're going to work together on this. And yeah, again, there should never be anyone who considers themselves a stranger in their own home. And that's just a really good principle for, I think, all of us to have. Again, ushers or greeters. Yeah, welcome implies, I'm happy that you've come. I guess I could say that at the beginning of Mass. Hey everyone, thanks for showing up. Well, imagine. Well, let's not imagine. Okay. Let's see. What would you say the enemy... Okay, yeah, I think this is a good point. I think that sometimes people think that being so hospitable, as I'm talking about, welcoming and everything, that it somehow destroys a sense of reverence. I don't believe that at all. And you all know me to be traditional enough to, I don't believe that. I've had people say, well, why are you doing that? It's supposed to be quiet. Yes, it's quiet. It's reverent, a reverent silence, a participation. But I would say part of reverence is hospitality, which hospitality is mentioned in the Bible. We talk about wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm there amongst you. This is a gathering. This is a family getting together. I would even say that, it's just a false conclusion. That by being welcoming, we're somehow diminishing, destroying that traditional sense of reverence. So the enemy of reverence is not hospitality. The enemy of reverence is, what would you think? I'll just say it. Arrogance. Pride. This is my spot. This is everything, and I'm not welcoming. No, of all places, Mass is a time for us to be humble, to humble ourselves before the Lord and the rest of our family members. And hospitality is not an add-on either. It's part of who we are, and that what we really need to do and be about. So, then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For when I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. A stranger, and you welcomed me. Again, there's that sense of we need to welcome anyone as if another Christ. I didn't just come up with that phrase. That's Saint Benedict. Every guest is to be welcomed as if another Christ. everyone who sits next to us, the people that you don't want to say hello to and to sign a peace, we greet. I mean, and in a pleasant way, right? I think it's also good for us to be able to say to those families who arrive, especially if we don't know them, and it's at the 8 o'clock or the 11 o'clock masses, welcome. And by the way, your children are welcome. Also, I don't know if you realize it, but we do have a nursery for those who can walk and up to about the age of 4. It's located over there. Oh, where is it? Let me show you. I mean, again, that's very hospitable, especially if they know that their children are in a really rotten mood that morning. By the way, for the record, whenever I have a young family and they say, well, what do you want us to do? Take them all to the nursery? I'm like, no, they need to be in Mass. These little Catholics need to be going to church. They need, when they are 1 year old, they're never going to remember being 1 year old, nor 2, but hopefully there will be a point in which all of a sudden they start remembering, and it's like, I don't remember when I first started going to Mass. It's so second nature. And you and I know who those kids are, where in utero, they have already attended Mass for 9 months. They have heard our organ playing. Think about it. They already know the sound of our organ. When someone comes in and they've never been into a Catholic church or into our church, it is so unbelievably crystal clear. These kids who are up and down over the pews and underneath, and the parents don't know what to do. Those kids who have been going, and yeah, of course they all have their off days and everything like that. Well, that's when I say, okay, parents, go ahead and pick them up. It's okay. You can go all the way to the back, and the ushers are always very good. You quickly open up the door, let them in, close the door again, trap the sound, And if ever they just go so unbelievably crazy, it's okay to invite them to step outside. That's not being rude. In a sense, it's being rude to the rest of the congregation if we don't do anything. It's okay that, just for a few moments until they kind of gather themselves. And in fact, I remember at times when Monsignor would have Mass and I would see young families kind of in the prayer garden, and then they make their way back. The kid is kind of calmed down. Great. That's fine. It's going to happen. Only 2 times in my 28 years of being a priest have I said something from the pulpit to parents whose kids are acting up. And those are 2 very difficult moments. And I'm not going to, I know I'm being recorded, so. I hope I never have to do it again. But there's nothing wrong with an usher if you need to say something to them. I've had this before. Father, I know my child was acting up, but I didn't want to get up during a homily and disturb everyone. I'm like, ma'am, you have my permission. I mean, a lot of you have been parents. You remember the kids screaming and you didn't even hear them. I mean, it was like, no, you keep going, you're watching TV, you're doing whatever, you're on the phone. You don't even hear your own kids at times, and that's what happens. There is nothing, wrong with encouraging someone to leave if need be, or if a kid is jumping up and down. And I have watched a parent, as the parent was watching the child rip one of the pages out of our, it was hymnal or the missal. And I walked up to her. That's not right. That's just, now it sounds like I'm harping on the bad parents. No, I shouldn't be. I want the kids there. I want them inside. But sometimes parents know that they They just can't keep the kids there. Or you need to make sure that they get to the vestibule, close the doors. You know that part of the drill. Does everyone know the warmest spot in the cathedral? The choir loft. So if anyone is ever cold, say, join the choir. All right? Heat rises. It's always warm up there. Where else in the body of the church? And this isn't a ploy to get people to sit up close, but it really is up close. You have all heard people complain that it's like a meat locker in there, Father, although people haven't complained of late because we do have a new system. I mean, new, 6, 7, 8 years old now. But when I arrived here, I mean, it could be so unbelievably cold in the middle of a very hot summer. But a lot of times it's because there's those blowers right there on the side, you know, right underneath the stained glass windows. And people sit there and they don't realize what's happening. Some people love it. It's great. you know, kind of turn themselves towards it, I guess. Other people, it's too cold. So so if someone comes back and says, "My goodness, it's so frigid in this cathedral," yes, it sure is. But you know, there are some areas. This is where you ministers, hospitality. You know, did you realize that up front, especially up front and on the sides, it definitely tends to be warmer? You know, I would encourage you to sit up a little closer. It's okay. And by the way, this gets back to the kids too. I don't mind kids sitting up close. One of the reasons children act up so much is that they've got all these people standing in front. They can't see anything of what's going on. When the kids are closer, and now they see, oh, okay, there it is. And then, okay, yeah, they might lose their attention, but then something happens and then the bells ring and they're looking at kids their own age or just a little bit older. So anyways, you can encourage them, or it's too hot. Well, let me seat you right where you need to be, you know, right where or well, we don't hear this too much anymore because we've been able to deal with the volume of the organ, and that is, you know, sometimes people had said, and maybe you get it to this day, and if you do, please tell me, ushers, the organ is so loud, it's too loud. I mean, there was a time in which we heard that a lot. Where we've been able to deal with it, figure some things out. The organ, especially when it was a new organ, you know, the organist is sitting there and the pipes go over the head, so it's not blaring in the organist's ears. So I know right where it is the loudest. It's basically right where the gift table is, right in the middle section, right there. I know it because when I'm walking in, all of a sudden it's louder, louder, louder. Okay, now it's starting to get a little quieter, you know. Or walking out, it's the same thing. So if there's someone who sits right in the middle, encourage them to sit all the way up front, you know. And then if it's really that bad of a situation, encourage them to sit further back because it goes over the choir loft. So much of the sound goes over the choir loft. So even knowing certain things like that, and if people complain, is, oh, okay, ma'am, I'm very sorry. Did you know that there are certain places that you can sit and it's not going to be as loud, not going to be as hot, not going to be as cold? And for you to know those areas, obviously, I think would be a very, very important. I think anyone who is especially a known minister, any type of a ministry, if ever you feel like, I need to take charge, I need to do something. You know, everyone here, you have my permission to, as it were, take charge. I mean, I think back to our beloved Monsignor, and when he stood there and it was evident something was going on, you know, it took like 45 seconds. We have a recording of it. We just took it off of our, for someone to get up there to assist. And I think it was like, okay, well, what do we do? All right, you know. And if someone passes out, you know, if someone we all know what it's like if someone passes out, which is very different than a heart attack, a stroke, something like that. if ever you need to come up to me and say, Father, we need to stop Mass, so-and-so, you know, usually when I hear someone kind of obviously falling, it's like, okay, another one's passed out. You know, that's my experience. And I know that you're taking care of it. But if you need for me to stop, and I will stop. I want to stop. I need to stop. But you just have to make sure to tell me. All right. I think I have now covered every area that I was hoping to. Let me open it up to y'all. I know the ushers, for example, we're being more mindful of the parking lot across the way and putting that parking lot full sign. As soon as people start driving around and around, we got to get that sign out there. By the way, as an aside, we're embarking on a parking lot beautification project. You know, I mean, not to beautify the concrete, but to, you know, everything around there and cut those metal things off, you know, the kind of the bumpers, and put modern day bumpers, actual concrete bumpers. We're afraid that the others have become too much of a trip hazard, or way too many kids try to, like a tightrope, and so we're going to take care of that, and with proper shrubbery and new trees that we can plant, especially all the way in the back, it'll look a lot nicer. So, anything that I missed or that you want to ask about? Any specifics? Yes.
Father, you had mentioned today being 9/11, and maybe it's a good time to remind everybody. We had some training that you had arranged. Would that be possible again to maybe record it even and put it on the church website?
And so the question is to make sure that that perhaps we have a training again with regards to an active shooter scenario or just something. And there are some pretty doggone nice videos out there that I could easily put out there again. And one of the former Catholic Center personnel is now part of the not home missions, Homeland, thank you, security. That whole effort, and I'm sure he would come back in a heartbeat. But one of the things that I've told the choir, I know this sounds crazy, but the choir, first of all, it's the priest who's the sitting duck, who's the target. And if I were to enter into the church, where would I enter? I probably wouldn't enter the front doors. Come in one of the side doors. Catch everyone off guard. You know? I know I've told the altar servers, what do? You don't like duck and get under the pew. You run. Get out of there. Run fast. Get out of the church. Run as far as you can. You know? I mean, again, I think a lot of people think that the best thing is there's something going on, sounds like fireworks, something's going on, and then they get underneath the pews or something, and again, you've made yourself an unbelievably easy target. Everyone's supposed to run, get out. Kind of like an airplane, know where the nearest exit is. And sometimes the nearest exit, they always say, is right behind you, but I'm going to tell you, sometimes it's right in front of you. If you were to run into the sanctuary, go run behind the ambo to where the nursery is, or there's an exit all the way in the back, or run to right where the sacristy is. You know, don't think you have to run out in the direction of the person or out the side. I mean, the side is obviously a very good place, but there are many areas of many ways in which to get out. I mentioned to the choir, I might need to mention it to them again, that they too are sitting ducks. You're up there in the choir. You know, how wonderful, how easy. Get up to the choir loft with your automatic weapon, and you know, and now you have this nice perch. I mean, if you want to try to think like a terrorist or some just crazed maniac, most people would probably just come walking in. All choir members have nice little projectiles that, boom, you're throwing at them, you know, and now all of a sudden they can't do much. We do have some security police individuals inside most masses who are armed, and most of them are stationed in certain ways in which they have a really great view of the entire church. And most of you have no idea who they are, and that's a good thing, you know? Some of you do know who they are, and that's, I guess, a good thing too. Let's see, I don't want to end on that note. Another question.
How many people do you envision being greeters at each door? Do you have kind of a, you know, this is too many, this is too few?
Right, thank you. So how many people at each door? Well, you know, up front, to have at least, I would say 6 people, it's almost basically like 2 people per entrance. You know, one who's a greeter could be opening up the door, another as an usher, always ready to usher, ready to direct them to the restrooms if they need. It doesn't happen too much, but sometimes they have trash to throw away. Usually it's a sign that this person's not Catholic because they've eaten within an hour. I mean, that's usually a pretty clear sign. But if they're showing up, we need to make sure that they know where to throw things away. I mean, on these side doors especially, having 2 or 3, yeah, I'm sure it could be too much if you had, you know, a dozen people. But, you know, if it's 3 or 4, that's fine. I also don't mind couples. I don't mind kids. Some of the kids, William Duncan, where are you? I saw you there. I mean, his son is one of he is a known usher. And he's able to talk to little kids as they're coming in, you know, eyeball to eyeball, you know. And here I think it's great, or to an older person. I mean, it's great, it's wonderful. So that's fine as well. You know, one thing is, and y'all have done unbelievably much better. When I first got here, the ushers would talk to each other, and, you know, oh, here, you know, as they're talking about the LSU score, you know. I remember, like I'm in the sacristy, and the ushers are talking about a Nebraska, what had been, Nebraska LSU? Did they play like 12 years ago? It doesn't sound right. But it was something. It was Nebraska something. And I walked to them at the beginning of Mass and said, hey, by the way, the Nebraska score was this, and whatever. And I said, I heard your conversation in the sacristy. It's a marble floor. Boom, it's quiet. It hits the ground. It goes. I mean, it really, really, I can hear things in the sacristy that, but again, I mean, that was more of an issue way back when. But try to be careful with regards to the conversation, or if the conversation's going on and someone's coming up, stop it in the mid-sentence, you know, hand it, hey, welcome, good to see you. Are y'all visiting? Oh, wonderful, welcome, you know. Or the regulars, or you haven't seen them in a while, to be able to say, hey, we missed you last week. You know, I don't think people have a sense of, uh-oh, they're keeping tabs on me. But, wow, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't feeling well. I was somewhere else. Well, great, good to see you. I mean, I promise you, when they get down on their knees to pray, it's going to be a far better experience than not having felt welcome. I would encourage, I know the ushers like to sit all the way in the back. Great, fine. You know, some of this is just being just aware of the surroundings and what's going on. Like if the first reader is already there and someone wants to be seated, you know, it's like, hey, how about if we wait just wait a moment, you know? Now, all of a sudden, the music starts, and now you bring them in, and you bring them in at a point in which it's as least disturbing. I've had ushers literally bring people in as everyone has sat down, the gospel reading is over, so it tells you how late they are. And there's the homily, time to begin, and they're walking in the very first pew, seating them all the way in the first pew. Well, it's not so much that I see what's going on. You know, the 300-400 people behind are distracted by what's going on right in front of them. I mean, sometimes it's just, we need to be aware. I mean, that's an obvious example of something that rarely happens, but let's see, anything else? Robert?
On your cleaning crew, make sure that they leave extra stuff in our little room back there so
Right.
we need supplies.
Okay, very good point, Robert. So I think everyone knows that underneath the stairs is a closet. Yeah, some of you may not know. Next time you look, you'll say, oh, wait a minute, I can kind of see it there in the wall. It's one of those where you push the door and then boom, it kind of releases. There is no handle. And then if you look under, you say, oh yeah, I'm underneath a stairwell right here. And there's usually a good supply, Now, this past weekend, we had Mr. Denny Long's funeral. It was on a Saturday, it was a full house, and we didn't have anyone come in right afterwards to tend the restrooms. And so the 4 o'clock group arrived, and they're like, oh my goodness, what's up? You know, your cleaning crew, Father, you gotta tell them something. So it was a oversight on our part. We didn't have people. Now, had there been ushers there at the funeral, this would have been a perfect thing for the ushers to do. We had a lot of guests that day. Now, here's another thing. Sometimes our lawn care crew, they don't know what we have going on a Saturday morning unless we tell them. And so they arrived nice and early. I thought everything was going to be great. So they trimmed all the bushes, looking very good. Then they went all the way over to Loyola and started trimming their bushes and left everything on the ground as people are arriving for the funeral. That's not too hospitable on our part. That was, I mean, no one's fault, or I'll take the blame. But if we're able to communicate with the people so that everything, I mean, they would have done it. They would have done it in a heartbeat. So it's just being attentive, like in areas like that as well. I can't tell you how many pieces of trash I pick up on it every day. Every day. On my way here, we had a huge group of the Catholic Women's League. They were in here for a luncheon this morning, and I picked up 2 items of trash between the corner there and right here. You know, so just even doing that, you see something, pick it up, throw it away. All right, now I've really gotten off track. But I already think we have an amazing parish. I think we can bump it up a little bit, which, by the way, one of those H's is homilies. I've got to make sure that I'm speaking to you, staying current, not, you know, using, you know, that the music needs to be top notch. You know, the 8 a.m. Group, now you have a violinist at that Mass. I mean, she's added an awful lot. My goodness, she's great, Liddy. And and she just offered it. Said, hey, I play the violin. By the way, hymns doesn't just mean how the organist plays and the cantor plays, but also how you sing. You're allowed to sing. You're really, really, truly allowed to sing out, even the ushers. Make a joyful noise, some of you. And yeah, the 3 H's, hospitality, hymns, and now I want to be hospitable by acknowledging that I have stood here for 60 minutes, and I promised you an hour, and the hour is up. And the food is awaiting me and you. So, without further ado, I do wish to say again, thank you for your presence here this evening, and thank you for being a great cathedral parishioner.